Well, I'm here in Wisteria Lodge, which is the other house that I own and I built most of. Um, and it's been about 10 years since I got hold of this house and moved it over here to Dancing Rabbit. And I lived in it for about a year and a half, and then I've rented it out to other tenants since then. And over the years, it's, been through a lot. And the earthen plaster in here has been through a lot as well. I did some work on the floor 2 years ago and really improved the structural integrity and sort of durability of the house over time. But there's a lot of blemishes in this interior plaster. The great thing about earthen plaster is that it's easily repaired. It's easily molded. You can see this spot here where it looks like somebody might have punched their fist through the wall or run into it at full force with something and busted in the plaster. So it's easy enough to just chip away all of this, redo the plaster, cover up that hole. There's also lots of cracks. There's stains, like this is where somebody's bed was, and you got your greasy body or your greasy head up against the wall, and it just leaves sort of a grease stain. So my plan with this project is to repair some of these cracks and the damage in the plaster, and then I want to put a clay Elise over it to sort of cover up some of the minor blemishes, and also to bring some pigment, some color into this house. And I might do some kind of design work in it as well, but basically I just want to get the wall covered. So a clay Elise is basically just like a clay-based paint, and you add pigment to it. You can add some other stuff. Usually it has wheat paste in it as well, and that will go on, and it will, pigment, and it'll be just like a paint. I'll just cover the earthen plaster over, and it'll cover up a lot of the blemishes, the cracks, and everything. I'm hoping it'll make this place look a lot nicer and maybe even brighter. Another great thing about earthen plaster is you can just reuse it. At least I can reuse this for the scratch coat because it's going to have straw in it, and it's going to have the less sifted scratch coat underneath it. And so all this stuff that I flake off, I can just get it wet again, mix it up, and I'll apply that as my scratch coat to repair this. And then we'll put a new mixture of a finish layer of plaster on it. So now I'm going to add a little bit of water to revive this plaster so I can reuse it. Probably going to have to sit a while because there's these big chunks in here, and they're going to take a while to imbibe the water. This is just water. You have to spray to wet down not only the straw but the adjacent plaster, so that it can all dry together, and so that it doesn't wick the water out of the plaster itself and make it dry faster and unevenly so that it would crack. So that's kind of the point of this. So I wet this plaster pretty good because I want to really try to get it to key in and fill in the space in this soft light clay straw, so that I can make it a firmer surface and it won't be as likely to crack in the future. So that's why I'm working this really wet plaster in. All right, so that first coat to cover the straw has fully dried and hardened, and now we're going to wet it down again because we're going to put the next coat on, which is the scratch coat. We'll leave maybe like a quarter of an inch on the surface to fill in with the finish plaster, and yeah, and then once that's done, we can go on to the Elise. So this is just a bucket of slaked clay. Slaked clay is just clay that's been soaked in water and is thoroughly wet. And I got this clay from when I dug the piers for my mudroom. So this is just from the ground. And I try to get pure clay for this. And I'm going to be sifting it through 1/4-inch hardware cloth here just to get some of the larger rocks out of it so that it's a smoother material for working into the earthen plaster. Okay, this is our slaked clay. Looks pretty good. So now I gotta sift the sand and mix the plaster. It's not the cleanest sand in the world, but it's what I've got, so try to make it work. And we're gonna measure out 2-to-1 sand to clay. Sand to slaked clay. Slaked clay. Approximately. So I put 4 of these in. Now I'm going to put 2 of the slaked clay in. And you usually need to add some water to adjust to get the right consistency, but we'll see what we end up with. And as you may know, the idea of the sand is like the bricks and the plaster, and the clay is like the mortar. And then the straw is going to be some fiber just to hold everything together. This is looking pretty good. Now we add some straw. Chopped straw. Some fiber into it. This kind of deep gap with a straw heavy mix plaster, because it was kind of an area where the light clay straw never really filled in, or they never filled it in, or it came out at some point. So now it's such a thick layer, to do it all with plaster would take a while. And this way it shouldn't crack having that much straw in it. Okay, so let's get a little bit of scratching going here. Nothing super sophisticated. Something that we can key into the final coat. So it looks like I have a new dog. I don't know what happened to Banjo, but this dog is taking the place of Banjo and is sitting in exactly her favorite spot. This is Virgil. Hi, Virgil. Say hi. Okay, so I'm mixing up this batch of finished plaster, and the ratio is basically the same as the previous scratch coat, only instead of straw, I'm taking sand and clay, slaked clay, and finely filtered sand, screened sand through a fine screen, and mixing in cattail fluff, these heads of cattail plants, and they have this fine fibrous fluff that is really good for finished plaster because it gives the finish a smoother surface, much smoother surface, but it still has that fiber that the plaster needs to hold it together. It's much better for a finished plaster. And so I mixed that up already in here, and I'm gonna head over to Wisteria now and start doing the finished plaster. I used up all of the finished plaster that I had. I tried to fill in some spots up at the top here that hadn't been finished in the past. They were sort of left rough because I thought I was going to put some kind of a ceiling on this, but I haven't done that yet. So, got all that covered smooth. I'm going to come back tomorrow with the burnisher and burnish the finished plaster to make it a smooth surface and so that the edges are smooth. It looks a little rough right now. In the next video, I'll be mixing up the Clay Elise paint, so you'll want to stick around for that. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, share, and give a thumbs up to the video, and we'll see you next time.